Hi, everybody.
Here we are.
I know, Preston. How exciting is
This is
this?
great.
So, when we realized, obviously, the world isn't how it was, and so when any sort of live tour wasn't going to be possible, my publisher, St. Martin, said, well, how about a virtual event tour where you'd support local bookstores and you'd be in conversation with somebody about the book? So immediately I was like, who would I like to talk about this book with? And I thought of our son, Preston. And I thought, I wonder if he'd read it. And I wonder what he'll think about it. How great is that, Preston? Remember when I asked you, do you think you'll read my new book?
This is awesome.
You were like, yeah, I'll read it. I was like, do you want to do an event?
I was like, sure, yeah. I think it's funny. Well, I just started. This is the second book my dad I've ever read. Which I don't know if that's crazy or not. I don't think there's any rules for this. It's a little. I also like when you're 13, you're not dealing with like the existential ideas of the world,
Right.
So I'm not gonna say there's not much. And now I'm at a point in my life where it's like this, this book we're here for today. I feel like I get a lot of it, and I feel like your books, the stuff you're speaking about, rings a lot more true than when I'm like 14 and like going to skate park and in high school. So it's.
I remember when you read, was it How to Be Here?
I've read everything. I've read Drops Like Stars, and I've read this book.
Because I remember, I think it would have been Drops Like Stars. You were like, "Oh, I've heard you say this, Dad."
Yeah, well, I mean, I read Drops Like Stars. That was like 70% looking at the pictures, And,
oh my goodness!
The issue is I would start to read them and be like, "This is the advice you've given me when I've had like a rough day." This is all stuff I've heard growing up, which is awesome. But it's just So this was probably the best first book to read by you.
Oh, I love it. We should explain to people, I'm in the main house. Preston lives in the back house. So we're like 50 feet away from each other right now.
Yeah.
Preston's like that way.
I could probably hit you with a stone if I like really
sure.
like a stone.
Sure.
So
what do you think?
Yeah.
So the book. Well, so we should tell people that we haven't discussed it.
Yeah,
so I kept it now.
I kept it for this. I was like, we're not going to talk about it. I'm going to leave it all on the Zoom. I don't know if this is a Zoom or this.
Oh, people, you've heard it here first. This is the thing. Okay, yeah. So what'd you think?
So here we go. I was struck. I think what stood out to me the most, what's very interesting, is this book is, I would say, half like a memoir, half what we are and what we're doing here. You know what I mean? It's very much half about your time growing up in your life, and then half about, I'd say, life as a whole, and the concept of birth and death and kind of everything in between. So I think the first thing that struck out was so interesting is to read about you getting your feet off the ground. Because when I was born, you owned a house. You know what I mean? Like, I've only known
when you owned
a house. Like I don't own a house. That's a big deal. So I've only ever known Rob Bell that like owns a house. He talked to all these people. He had this established life.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very interesting. It's so cool to read you. I mean, when you're my age, I'm 20 years old, which is so cool to sort of read from your perspective of how you got your start and you kind of finding your groove in the world.
Yeah.
So when I'm finding because all I've ever known is my dad, who provides me and drives me to school and drives me to skate park and does all of the parent things, which I think
different. Is it different to read than to hear? Because I've told you stories over the years. What is it about a book that's different?
That's a very good question. I think it's. I guess the question. I guess the answer would be to have it all in have it all in order, or kind of have it all laid out. You would tell stories, and then you tell a story, then I go on with my life the next few months, then I get another story. You know what I mean? It's to sit down and read them all together is very much like I feel like well, first I want to say, which is interesting, I don't read the book in your voice.
Oh, you don't?
Which is yeah. To know you to heard your voice probably more than any voice in my life. And
Whose voice is it? Whose voice is it?
I don't know. I don't read it as you wrote it, which is interesting.
It's just some random voice of some guy?
Yeah, it's like it's Well, I think even for the first part, it's someone I didn't know. You know what I mean? It's someone like,
yeah.
which is so cool to sort of.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I guess so. And I think the major themes of the book, that struck out to me were obviously that it's all connected, and I think that's for people who are going to read the book. That's a thing that is very talked about in the book, that we're all a collective thing, and learning to love the people who you have in your life who annoy you the most. They annoy you because you are scared you see a bit of yourself in them. And realizing that, for me, when I realized that, it was a huge deal. That once you start seeing as this collective whole, we all, none of this, like, instead of the crabs in a bucket, just trying to get out, the better your neighbor does, the better you all do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I wanted. The subtitle is Who We Are, which is easy to read as like who Preston is, who Rob is. But like that section where it talks about how the universe for 13 billion years, it starts at particles, then goes atoms are new, and then molecules are created with atoms bombs are new, and then cells. Human beings are actually the newest layer to emerge in the universe.
100%. And it's like this united we stand, divided we fall. This sort of like
right
together. Life is all relationships, and that's what we take to get to the next level. You know
right.
what I mean?
So who we are is we're the newest layer of creativity and complexity to emerge in the universe. Like we're something cosmic that the universe has never seen before.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even compared to like for me, a musician, one of the most crabs in the bucket industries imaginable. There's this whole like people, you get jealous of if a band takes off, but in reality, that band takes off, they bring you on tour. That, like, you always say, it's analogy. You always say this metaphor of, or this story of like when a Burger King goes across the street from McDonald's, the sales of both of them skyrocket.
Yeah.
It's because then people think fast food and they go to that corner. And I think that's a lot of this sort of like, once you see it as a whole collective thing, that's how you move forward with the relationships. And then you learn that that's how it all started, and that's where we're all going with that sort of thing. That, and then also the other theme was sort of the endings that really struck out to me, because it's proved very true in my life, is the endings becoming new beginnings. And one thing has to end for the next thing to start. And that's like, when you look back at your life, everything that ended, it had to end with a new thing. And I think the hardest parts that I found in my life are those between periods, where it's sort of one thing ends, the next thing hasn't started.
Oh, the section on liminal space. Like the threshold. Like there's this room, then there's the threshold of the door, then there's the next room. And sometimes you're in the threshold. So you're not in the room you came from, and you're not in the room you're going to. You're in between the rooms.
Yeah, completely.
And that's, you gotta really stay centered and calm and cool, because otherwise, liminal space. When you read, what was it like for you to read the opening section about the world that I came into?
That's I think is what's interesting. Is I was at work the other day, and I think I was thinking about my name. I think we had an order that was my name, and I started thinking about my name, and I was like, it was the first time reading this book. So I remember the first night I sat down to read this book, I couldn't put it down. So I never paid attention to ancestry. And for people who haven't read the book yet, it's not out yet, right?
Tomorrow. So
all of you, essentially. It opens with this big piece on my dad's ancestry, and my grandpa, my great-grandpa, Preston, who I was named after, and his grandpa, Neil, and they sort of his journey from Denmark to California. And it's the ancestry of our family. And it's funny because the importance of that never really struck out to me. Like I never, it's funny, at 20, it's almost the first time that I was like, you're right. I come from people who have seen, like the man who I was named after, Preston Bell, who fought in World War II, he knew a much different earth than I knew. And something about that makes you feel like you have a bigger mark on this. Because as a human, you sort of deal with like, whoa, like every now and then it'll hit me and I'll be like, whoa, I'm just a very small speck. Everything feels so big, and then you feel like, whoa, there's been so many years. Like I think reading this reading this book and kind of touching on the ancestry really helped me kind of understand that it's like, whoa, to get to where I am now, there's been this creation of life, and there's been all these people who have and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and your great grandfather Preston comes home from World War II, dies from cancer at 34.
Yeah,
and then he has two sons, my dad, Papa, and my dad's brother. My dad's brother, whose name is Douglas, dies when my dad and his brother are in high school, and so I remember, like in the book, when I tell about being in the hospital when you were born and introducing my dad to our new son, Preston Douglas Bell. And in that moment in the hospital, all that loss and history is there in the room in that moment with you.
Exactly, which touches on the death, from death comes life. And that's like the bit you talked about where it's all, and that's, I think, the most interesting thing is you learn that all of that happened, all that pain that my grandpa, your father, went through, and then to have me, I'm named after Preston Douglas. Which is, it's just interesting it makes you feel, for me, I had this profound sense of like, wow, it's like and I think even what the book is getting at is that we've all come from the same thing, and we all belong together. And it's interesting to learn, like, yeah, this is, I come from all these people, and this is like my sort of mark on this giant world, is not just these 100 or so years that I live here and sort of do whatever I do here. It's like I come from this lineage of people. And that was really interesting. That was kind of the first time I've really looked into that and sort of struck this, like,
yeah, there's this line, we come from somebody, we come from some bodies. And that no one is a child is not a blank slate. Like, we're born, each of us, into a story that's already unfolding. Like we basically stumble onto the stage in a play.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a bunch of characters and things that have happened, and there's like a plot, and we can take it. And that's one of the things I wanted people. It's like a heart feeling in the book, was to think about their own drama, like the history and the soil, you know what I mean, and the bodies that we each come from, because it shapes us in innumerable ways. And if you're cut off from that, it's not nostalgia, it's not stuck in the past, it's incredibly helpful to learn about where you come from.
Talk about giving you like meaning, like when you learn about who all came before you to get to the place that you are.
Yeah,
it gives you this insane sense of like, wow, I can keep this going, and whatever I do here will increase the next round of people. And which that's fascinating. And that was like a very big, I guess what's also funny too is because the stories you've told me, I read the book, but I honestly don't know. It's hard for me right now to remember what's in the book and what stuff that you've told me. You know what I mean? Which is interesting with reading all this stuff. So apologies when talking about
where you got which stories.
Yeah, so apologies if I talk about anything that's not in the book. You know what I mean?
I was struck that you said that the part of the book when I'm your age, you never knew that guy. Yeah,
that's a very interesting. It's like, I guess the only thing I want to talk about next was I think it's when you're 20. So when you're my age. I know this was a very big moment for you because you played in a band, Ton Bundle, in college. Great band. If anyone here ever, I think just a nice little Ton Bundle Rob Bell search will get you some downloads.
Is it? It's on the internet.
Yeah, I might have just done something right there. After I found it.
Oh my word! Oh my word! Okay, so there you go. That
was really, really good. Like, you know what I mean? You hear like sometimes it's cool to hear like, you know, what your parents did or your friends' parents did, and because it's like but this was always like, whoa, I genuinely listen to this. This is really, really good.
Amazing.
And so you played in that band, and then you talk about in the book how the band falls apart your senior year. You guys just got a manager. You're playing these big clubs. You're kind of making a band's name is Ton Bundle, TonBundle. Yeah. So I just caught that right there. Like, you know, REM meets the Pixies, little replacements in there.
Touch of all the Femmes.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is, and then the story is, senior year came, and everyone kind of got jobs, and you had, what was the infection that you?
Viral meningitis.
Viral
It's like
meningitis.
the fluid around your brain gets infected, and it squeezes your brain against the walls of your skull, and you think you're going to die. And everybody I've ever met who had it is like,
you're like, everyone I've mentioned, I thought I was going to die, and everyone I've asked
you're going to die.
is like, you think you're going to die.
The worst.
And it's just an interesting moment because I feel like I definitely had this, and I feel like lots of people have this, which is so relatable, is you have this sort of like, this is it. Like, you were like, we're going to be the next biggest band. It's all lined out. Yeah. It's all happening. And then boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
Just like that. And I think that's what's so interesting for you with all of your success and everything that you've accomplished, that you had that moment where you had to start from zero. Like,
I can't, I don't know how my parents did it. Like, we're way into the fall of my senior year of college, and the band had broken up, and I had no plans. Yeah. Like, I had no skills. I knew how to paint. I had Skinny Boy Painting Company, which was me. Yeah. I had a painting company. Well, I was the sole employee. So I knew how to paint houses. I mean, I could work, but beyond that, I'm at a 4-year liberal arts college.
Yeah, exactly.
And no idea what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and like and I think I feel like a lot of people, I guess for me living in LA, I see very up close the failure it takes to achieve what you want, and how many of the greats miss. You know what I mean? I think that's like a thing that how many people.
What do you mean by the failure that it takes?
I guess another thing you talk about in the book too is that it's very easy to go. You look at Tom York, you look at any of these big people, and you're like, oh, they must just every song he sits down, he writes is great. You don't.
Oh, right.
And you sort of don't. It's very easy to see these sort of larger than life big figures, and you're like, they were born with this gift they had, and then when you look a little closer, you're like, oh no, they wrote 100 songs for that 12 song album.
Right.
Really, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they listened back to In Rainbows and were like, you know, is this any good? And I think that's what's so interesting when you read this book is it's a very honest and intimate take on how you just threw yourself in there. And there were times when you had no idea what was going to happen. There were times, which I think is always good to hear. It never hurts. It always is like, oh, everyone wonders if like you told me when you were writing your first book that most of the time you spent almost so much time wondering if you were even a writer.
90% of the energy of the first book, I swear, was, am I a writer?
Yeah.
Is this any good?
100%.
Yeah, it wasn't writing the book. It was head games. It was just head games.
Like you imagine that. Like all the books that you've sold and your first book, you spent half the time just wondering if you were a writer. Which is huge. And I think that's more inspiring than anything. And that's what that point in the book is where you're like, I'm like, you were my age and you had no trades. And the one thing you put the basket you put all your eggs in just collapsed.
Yeah. Yeah. I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. And I noticed, by the way, Preston, over the years, I would ask, it was when somebody told me a story about it not going well that felt like more of a gift to me than the stories they told about how they nailed it and how about they were so good and about, because I was always asking people questions. I carried a notebook around. I wanted to know how people found their way in the world. So at your age, I was like you, always asking people, what was it like? What'd you try? What happened then?
Yeah.
And it was whenever somebody told me a story about it not working, that always felt like the gift they gave me. It's like, oh, okay. So this is just how it works.
Yeah. That's the inspiring bit is you're like, whoa, this is like,
because in some ways the book is just a story of like awkward, embarrassing, odd moments.
Yeah.
Just duct taped together over
that
50 years.
100%. And even like you wrote your TV show that was great. Yeah. And it just never got picked up.
Oh my goodness.
That's what happens.
It's sitting somewhere. The script is somewhere in the bowels of ABC to this day.
Yeah.
It's just like,
you just do these things.
Just nothing ever happened. Oh.
And I think that's what I really took away from this is like in the importance of I mean, there's another thing you talk about with the importance of the struggle, in that it all came from struggle. Even the act of reproduction comes from what, a million sperm cells, and there's one that makes it.
Right, hundreds of millions of deaths, essentially.
Exactly, and that's what makes it interesting. If you just glided through it, it wouldn't be interesting. It'd just be like, you don't care about the things you can just, like, I can just, grab this water bottle. If it was not hard to grab that water bottle, you'd be like, be a bigger deal.
Because like, you think about when people, like a TV show or a movie or a novel, like, or anybody just at a dinner or a party telling a story, if something has to be difficult in the story, or literally it's not called a story.
Yeah.
Or we're all just like, I don't care. I'm not rooting for this. I have no vested interest in this thing because there's nothing at stake. How does that affect you? How does that affect how you think about being 20?
I think it's just the idea of, like, you just have to kind of, I guess you have to just learn how to fail. You have to learn how to just make stuff that sucks, Like,
Yeah.
I think that's almost the most useful skill, is just learning how to, like, spend all day working on something, and at the end of the day, just deleting it, and then the next day getting up and still doing it. That's what I found, and that's what I think I've gotten better at. I think when I was 17 or 18 or 19, you would spend all day, and then at the end of the day, it'd suck, and you'd be like, whatever. And then you'd be like, I'm not going to touch that again. And then a month would go by, and then if you really care about it, it eats at you. Then you give it another try. And I think now I've gotten to the point where I can sort of separate it, and I can do something, and then at the end of the day, if it's not good, I can wake up the next day and do it, and not have this big identity of it, of like, oh, this represents me. This is like.
Oh, that's so well said. Right. Because it's an issue of worth or identity is not in play when it doesn't go. Because someone the other day asked me a question about failure, and I realized honestly, that isn't even really a category I have anymore. Because if it bombs, or if it's not, that's all an attachment to a particular expectation.
That's all part of it. Exactly.
And we're just doing what we do, and it'll.
And then in the book, you learn that that's what we even come from. Is that what we come from? Is this millions of deaths so the one sperm cell can reproduce?
It's biologically true.
It's almost like the reason we all exist is because of all these failures that became the one thing that is us, which I think helps. I mean, the creation process in the life. I mean, even in the life process, you just learn what works and what doesn't, and it all comes.
And not to spoiler alert, I love that you point that out, but I wanted the book to be whatever it is, 300 pages of me stumbling through life, but it's okay. And then all of a sudden at the end, it does this weird lurch right turn into how we all got here, which is involving all kinds of death.
Yeah.
And yet we're here. So biologically, cosmologically, at all levels, you just throw yourself into it. And you don't nail it on the first try. It wanders a bit, and that's all part of it. Yeah.
And that's, and I think that's like I don't know, I have my little notes here, everyone, that I'm going off.
What do you got next on your notes?
I'm kind of going out of order, so, nothing's, can't say anything's particularly next. But I guess I'm just trying to think of what else. It's funny because I'm looking at the timer and I'm like, whatever we get into, we're gonna dive into.
Let's do a few more and then we'll do questions or something.
Yeah,
I have a couple questions for you. I have a couple questions for you at some point.
Cool. Yeah. So everyone start asking questions. Upvote the questions that you want. If someone asks a better question than you have, or whatever you want, votes at the top or C.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay, when you get later in the book, and when we crossed the year 2000.
Yeah.
And then year 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. Do you remember those events?
It's actually really funny you said this. I was reading it and you were talking about, you're like, so I wrote this book in 2011. And I was like, no, which book was that? I was like, couldn't be Love Wins. I looked it up and I was like, no way, that was 2011. Because there's this bit in the book where he talks about writing this book, and he starts showing it to everyone. And they're like, oh, this is going to change things. Spoiler alert, it did. It's really funny because I was like, that was 2011. I was like, no way, that was 2011. And then I went back and looked at the dates of all your books, and I was like, okay, this was when I was 5. This was when I was, and yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting is I think we actually talked about this, right? I don't know if we talked about this earlier, but reading this book, it's all of these. You're telling me all these stories, and I'm like, okay, that's what was going on when I was 8. You know, like this is what was, which is so interesting because I mean, I'll never go back in time. I'll never be 20 in 2008, but I can almost read this, and I'm like, okay, cool. So now the little pieces, memories I have from that, I can kind of piece together with what was with what was actually going on, and not in some sense of like what was actually going on, but just like what was, what was happening. Which I think is so cool. Like I definitely the Love Wins one stuck out because I was like, that wasn't 2011.
What do you remember about that time?
It's funny. I don't think I was really tapped in. I don't think I was really tapped into it. I think that you have always had like I've never once felt a worry from you. Like I've never felt like whoa, maybe this book was like a too big of a, it just didn't really affect me. I didn't go to a Christian school. I wasn't really around people in that sort of world or even a religious world who would have like, so my life was completely separate from all of that.
Yeah. And that was on purpose. That was on purpose.
Yeah. And especially when I really appreciate that I can go back as a 20-year-old and sort of look through those moments and be like, okay, that was going on. And I'm glad that I was 11. I was probably playing with Nerf guns or something. And,
or making YouTube stop animation films.
Yeah, exactly. And,
do you remember like 2006, the first bus tour?
I do. I can't say I remember. I remember buying a Batman Lego set before we went on. And I remember playing with it in the back, and the tour manager was like, "Can you prove your Legos?" And I was like, and then looking back, I'm like, it probably was a little annoying just having Legos all over your tour bus. Like how cramped those things are. And I'm like, oh, I was a kid playing like. Well, it's funny too because I watch like documentaries of my favorite bands, and they have their kids on the bus playing tours, and I'm like, that was me. Yeah, I was doing that.
Do you have memories of like you and Mom and Trace on a Sunday, like driving in, and I'm giving a talk? I'm giving a talk at North Hill, and there's like all those people and people in orange vests parking cars and that whole like scene. Do you remember that?
I have great memories of it, and I think it's funny because it never really clicked. It just never. It was sort of like
just a thing Dad's doing.
Yeah, you just can't really. I don't know. You just, even now it's like, I feel like I know you so well, and then you get up on stage and it's like, yeah, I was like, oh, he also does this. Like, no way, You're like, he also does that. That's crazy. As if you didn't do enough, As if you all like, you're like, whoa, he also gets up and talks to 3,000 people 3 times a day. But 9,000 people a day? It's insane. I remember, well, I mean, I have clear memories of because you would do 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock and it's 5 or 6.
6, yeah.
And I remember we stopped doing the night one.
Yeah.
Dad can come home for Sunday night waffles. So we'd always make Sunday night. We'd always make waffles.
Yeah.
And it was like this. Yeah, and I think it's very interesting too to sort of like, you talk a lot about you started this church and people were telling you what you could and cannot say. It was like, you started this. This is your thing. And then it got to the point where these people were like,
yeah. All of a sudden somebody apparently had some rules, but I wasn't aware of.
And I think it's like, I guess I just growing up, you guys did such a good job of you didn't keep me in the dark, which I really appreciate. It wasn't like, oh, this is what Dad does, but you talked about it, but I had such a different world. I never felt consumed by it. Because I think that's a lot for a kid, especially with the stuff you were talking about and doing. You have, believe it or not, you have a lot of people who disagreed. Don't know if you know that. And so that's, I'm glad I wasn't like 11 and going to school and having kids be like, whoa, your dad thinks like women deserve rights? Like, what's wrong with him? You know what I mean? Like, I was glad that I didn't experience that as a kid, because that would have been, and I'm glad now I can sort of look, and it's very interesting. So I think I only remember the good parts. I only remember just being like, this is awesome. Like, I get to go. We'd go to Mars Hill and we'd see all your friends, all these people I liked, and but I never felt all of the I don't know what the word is for it, but So yeah, a lot of this stuff I remember being there, but I don't really have much memories of it, just because it was like that's what my dad does, and I go play with my Nerf guns and make my stop animation videos.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. And I think what's funny is I never, like as a kid, like when you're 13, the stuff you're talking about in these books, I don't really like the existentialism and all of the things about love and humanity and stuff. Now I kind of get it. Now I understand that that's what you were.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about this whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
I was always like, I think that you and Trace, I was like, someday I wonder if they'll be like, oh, this is what you were talking about. Oh, got it. This is actually quite interesting.
No, 100%. And it's like
you'll have your own questions and your own stuff.
I have a question too. For you talking about all this stuff, did you ever have this like, oh, I wish like, not that my family cared more or not, or did you ever have this filter? Like, would you ever create things and be like, I wonder what so-and-so would think of this, or I wonder what, and because I feel like now I'm at the age where I do like think, now I do look into your work, and now I do sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
it was always like a when they get it when they get it kind of thing.
Yeah, I really wanted you. I knew that the only thing a parent just find work you love and throw yourself into it.
Yeah,
that's a gift that I gave you all. Was this is what I do. I love it. I'm going to keep doing it. Keep exploring. Keep trying things, and that any sort of trying to get you all to get something or make you believe was a rubbish and a complete waste of time. The only thing was to live a life that actually worked and had joy and hope. And that was the gift to give to you all.
Exactly.
And then like in the book, do my own work of like my own issues. And I talk about in the book, going on the inner journey of working out my stuff. Mom and I always were like, that's the gift we give you.
Exactly.
And I'd also seen people who went into like spiritual teacher, pastor world that kind of made it like to their kids, like, we're doing this thing. This is what we're here to do. This is our cross to bear. This is our burden. It's pretty tough. And life is kind of crappy, but we're going to get our rewards. And the kid is like, I just want to Nerf gun. I just want to go to the movies. Let's just go. So I always detested. Mom and I were like, no, we're doing this because we love it. Man, this is what we would be doing. Like, this is where the joy is. And I never, ever wanted you all to, I just knew that you would never grow up with like us being like passive or resigned or it stinks, but I guess it's what we're supposed to do. We're like, no. Yeah. We're going to do what we want to do here.
And I really appreciate the way that I sort of you let me walk into this stuff. It wasn't like I could sort of peek into that. I could go to Mars Hill when I wanted to. I could peek into that world and see what you did. Sure. And I think it's that hard bridge across, because you don't want, you didn't want me to be too consumed in it. And you didn't also want me to feel like you were hiding something. Like, this was like, this is that, like, you know, this is your dad's business. You don't tell you about that. Like on some Sopranos vibe. You know what I mean? Like,
Sopranos.
I'm in waste management, you know, kid. Like,
this is what really goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. That is so funny.
Yeah, but I think I guess it's just thinking about all that stuff. It's like, it's so cool that that's what was. Yeah, because I'll never know, like I'll never really know that the kid in the 90s playing in Tom Bundle, you know, and this is sort of the, like, as much as the stories you tell me, this felt like the most, okay, this is him from those years, you know? And I think it's also, what's interesting, it's a very intimate book. It feels like you're talking right to the person. You're sort of telling them, because there's a lot of like, it touches a lot on how everyone matters and how your importance in the world and how we're all connected and it's all this big thing. And it just definitely feels like you're telling them the story directly. This is how it.
Yeah, and this was huge for me, that I wanted to create something that was so particular to what it's like to be me, that people who read it would from the get-go be like, oh my God, that's me.
Yeah.
It's like double down on the particulars to find the universal. Go far enough inside of me that I find everybody.
Well, I think it's this interesting balance too. Of it's like you're very much I'm just like you, but I'm also here to give you some. And I think you guys talking in the book how you're not waiting for people to catch up. You're meeting them where they are, and you're not like providing them with some gift. You're just walking them through it all. But I think what's interesting is you have this sense because you get too intimate, and you don't like coming from the music world. You get too intimate, and your songs don't hit the back of the room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's take Bon Iver versus Foo Fighters. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not hearing those intimate songs they can't reach the back of an arena, but when you listen to him, you feel like he's talking right to you. But then when you get those big, just, those meat and potatoes rock songs, these big pop songs, it's great because you all feel included in it, but you don't feel like they're addressing you. And I feel like this book does a really good job it sort of captures both. You're talking right to me, but you're also helping me and giving me these big ideas. These,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Oh, I never saw it in like musical terms because I wanted it to be the most intimate song that filled the whole venue.
Exactly, because it's like
talking about my own ache and pain and anger and what it's been like in such a way that you start to realize that each of us are reflective of the universe as a whole.
Exactly.
The thing happening way in here is reflective of the thing happening way out here.
Because I mean, I guess I keep going back to music, but you want to be, if you want universe in particular, you want people to feel like you're one of them. But if you also want to be a tribal leader, you have to step up at some level and be like, hey, this is, you know what I mean? Someone has to lead at some level. So it's just this balance of when am I just like you, and when am I like, hey, I have something that.
Yeah. That sense you and I've talked about when you feel like you have something to say.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out how to say it.
Yeah. Because you don't want to be the person who never
are.
But you don't want to be the person who's too scared to say something, And it's this in between.
Yes, I love how you put it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, should we what do you think about questions?
I think these questions. This is interesting, right? Like I'm having a good time doing this. I had this moment of like, people are watching this, man. Like, also, I don't think it's good to be staring at yourself for this long. I don't think humans are built to be doing this. Just looking at yourself talk for like an hour.
I'm so glad that people are seeing how hard you make me laugh on a regular basis. And it's funny because this is how you and I talk. Like I would come to the back house there and sit on the couch right behind you, and we would have a conversation pretty much
right here,
exactly like this.
After Effects, put your face right there, and we're you're right here, guys. You're right in the Bell household.
Oh, that is great. So, other questions. I'm assuming their questions are going to be for you. They're going to all want to ask you. Yep. Is there a question for you in there?
Yeah. Let's hope. Okay. Let me go. I'm gonna read these first. I'm not gonna read them aloud in case I don't want to answer that. And then
right. We're living in your world, Preston. Pick one that sounds like fun.
Okay. Here we go. So this person just listened to the Kristen and Trace episode of the Robcast. So
yeah. Well, that's a lot of bells for a day.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting the full. And they said they both mentioned mystical experiences that you've had. What has been the most profound mystical experience you've had, and how do you find yourself becoming more open to the mystical as you age and mature? I guess I don't know if I let the biggest one I've experienced, but I would always like when I would talk about like my belief in spirituality or like a God or how everything's connected. I would always say the amount of times that I'm like, I'm gonna text that person, and then you get the little vibration, and you're like, no way, it's them. I feel like I've had too many moments of that in my life to not believe this is all connected. Too many moments when you're like I have moments where I've typed out a message to someone I haven't talked to in like a month, and I've literally typed it out, and then I get a text message from them. Almost the same thing. You know what I mean? Too many times are you like thinking of something, and that same thing appears. So I don't think I have like a big mystical moment, but I think I have so many every day. I'm just kind of like.
I've noticed you playing live shows with music. Talk about connecting with something.
Yeah, I think it's Brandon Flowers is a quote. But I was like, playing music too is you're playing with fire. Like a bad show will put you out, but a good I probably go a month off a good show. Like we're playing
you say that
out show, people are into it, all your friends there. Like I'm going for a month, like waking up, like, like, give me like a month, definitely. I'm sure you're the same way. Like, and I think I guess that's probably the most mystical because that's the only thing I feel like I've ever lost myself in. Playing like a good show, like a packed show. That's the only thing where I've actually been able to sort of leave If that makes sense. You're like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Well,
Like,
historically, nature, music, love. There's a couple big ones,
yeah,
and music is one of them that people often say an unmediated experience of the divine, the infinite spirit.
yeah. So
Music has been central.
you got sex, you got drugs, you got rock and roll, you got spirituality. You know,
I'll tell you, when you guys were born, when
yeah.
all of a sudden there's a new human being in the world and we're gonna care for you. Those three moments for me, you three
Well,
kids.
no, 100%. I think that like these um mystical experiences, I feel like that's with playing shows was the one, like a good show when you kind of get lost in it. It's the only time it gets quiet. You know, from the second I wake up, the second I go to bed, it's just, you know, just doesn't, it's like a little jackhammer. And those are the few moments when you just are sort of like you, and I think that's what everyone's searching for. Like when
tell me about that. Tell me more about It Goes Quiet. Like the chatter.
It was so quiet, I don't remember it. But,
yeah, you know, yeah, good. No, like chatter.
Yeah, it's like I think you have this filter, you have this voice that you live your life in with reactions and your thoughts and whatnot, and then you find those few things in your life where the voice gets quiet and you're sort of just there in the moment. You know what I mean? And that's sort of, I think, what everyone you sort of spend your whole life looking for that. And I'm sure you found it in performing and with your writing. And I think that's when it all, that's probably the most mystical moments, is those ones where, and I get it in church, I get it with friends, you know, you get it when you're out and you like, you get it with you guys, I get it with dad, with you, mom, I get it, that kind of moment where you're like, whoa, this is, I'm here right now. There's nothing.
Right.
You lose yourself.
Yeah. You're in the eternal now, which is when you're not in the past, you're not in the future, you're just here and nowhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, what else you got?
I have a question for you, Dad. So he says, I've seen you mention The Divine Conspiracy by Dallas Willard a couple times. It's my all-time favorite book. What specifically about chapter 3 of the book changed everything for you?
Oh, a deep cut. So this philosopher named Dallas Willard wrote this book. And a friend of mine, you know, Kent Dobson, gave the book to me, I want to say 1999. And chapter 3 is called A God-Bathed World. And it is about the divine presence in all of life. So as opposed to spaces split up. And some spaces, you know what I mean, are more electric, holy, sacred, whatever the word is. Chapter 3 of that book is about how Jesus saw the world, which is a world drenched in the divine presence. And I think I was at that point a couple of years into being a pastor, which is your job is like helping run a religious institution, you know what I mean? Which inevitably splits the world up. I talk about it a bit in the book. Into some spaces are different than other spaces, but seeing that in the ancient tradition, all ground is holy. I think that, yeah, one of the most significant sort of explosions of insight for me that turned everything around. Yeah, that's inside baseball. That's a good question. Yeah, God-bathed world.
I have a question for Preston. How has your dad's work influenced you? There's a lot of ways this has. There's a lot of ways. I think the first thing that's funny is I have a story. I have a friend, one of my best friends who I used to work with. He would come over and he was talking to my dad about, and my dad was like, "Oh, I don't go on social media much." You were kind of talking about how you live your life. And you walked to the room and he was like, "I will do anything that man says because he is actually happy." It's like whatever he says, I will do because that guy is actually happy. And I feel like that's what's interesting to me the most is this idea of like you actually found something you enjoyed, and it's not this like, "Hey guys, I'm enjoying this," and you can see through. You know what I mean? Like that person who's like smiling so hard, you're like, you might as well just frown, man. You know what I mean? Like that smile that's so kind of like making
up for something, right?
Yeah, and I feel like growing up, seeing you actually find something that you threw yourself into and you lose yourself in and you genuinely enjoy was the most inspiring. That's the most influential thing you could ever give someone. Is proving to them, showing them, and then proving to them that you can find that it exists out there. That thing that you love and that thing that will fulfill you. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of people don't have that in their life, which is, for me, always having it. It's very interesting. I meet people and I hear about people who, if you don't have that, you're like, is there actually, will I ever find something that will fulfill me and that I can like spend my time doing? You know what I mean? So to have that as my dad is a very, very influential and profound thing.
Shout out to Liam.
Yeah, shout out to Liam. I would be very surprised if he's watching this, but
Liam is with us in spirit tonight.
He actually dropped. I think he applied for Book Soup once. So I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'd say hire him.
Put in a good word.
I can talk to you after this about his credentials.
Liam, putting in a good word.
Okay, so someone's asking about, are you excited about what happens after the death of this body? Will our meager understanding and learnings from experiences in this life be worth anything after death? I'm going to say something really quick. That's the other thing I was going to talk about in the book. What's so interesting is it's, especially when you get talking about death and I mean death before life and death after life. I'm reading it and I'm like, this is the kind of stuff that like these thoughts pop in my head and I'm like, think something else. You know what I mean? Like these just giant existential ideas, which is so, there's a lot of stuff in this book where I'm like, these are the type of things that like I try to think about because they just, once they drill in your head, you're like, so before you answer that question now, I read it and I was like, do I want to answer this? Do I want to talk about this? And I appreciate you for talking about these things, you know?
The questions about what happens when you die?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you live more and more in the present moment, as you find the joy and the presence in this moment here and now, then those sort of questions, it's not that they become less interesting. They just take their proper place in the spectrum of things that you think about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I assume that whatever the essence of me, the essence of you, the essence of the person asking the question, the soul, the whatever is it that makes Preston Preston. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My assumption is that goes on because what we now know is that time is actually an illusion, that past, present, and future are constructs that we have to sort of make sense of this, but that there is no now. And what's interesting now is in physics, you have all these new discoveries about the nature of time. A clock on the mountain runs faster than a clock on the ground. Somebody wearing a watch on a plane, that watch is running faster than somebody who stays on the ground. So more and more, these new ideas over the past 100 years are going to filter into larger mass consciousness as people realize that time isn't what we think it was. So even the idea that you die and then what happens next, one of the things that will happen is you won't be still 100% caught up in this conception of time. So yeah, it'll be fascinating. And there's nothing meager about this experience we're having.
No.
It'll probably just be like, well, the move from 2D to 3D and 4D. String theorists say that for the universe to be the way that it is, there have to be at least 11 dimensions. So you and I, Preston, live in 3, almost kind of 3.5 dimensions, but we now know that there are other dimensions. So, oh yeah. We're just getting, when I say like we're just getting started, I often say that because I like saying that. I think that's true on lots of levels.
See, I feel like a lot of this stuff in the book honestly went over my head just because I was like, I can't think about this right now.
That's fine. You're 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of quantum physics stuff, a lot of that. I mean, what's the one quote you have about quantum physics where you're like, if you're not
study it and you're not completely outraged or your mind isn't blown, then you aren't studying it. Yeah,
you are actually studying it. I was like,
yeah. The universe is way weirder than anybody ever thought it is.
Okay, here's one from a fellow named Jonathan Sprang.
Jonathan Sprang.
Here we go. I love this. What would it look like to create a faith community for those that cannot accept the faith the church has spelled out? I definitely know a few of those. How can I provide a safe space for people who have lost faith in the church Bible but still believe in loving a life of love? I want to provide a safe space for questions and doubt. Any insight you can provide would be appreciated.
Jonathan, Preston, isn't this just this question? By the way, Jonathan, I don't know if anywhere I go in the world somebody doesn't ask this question.
This is what you do. You know what I mean?
So here's the thing, Jonathan. Just make it. So Jonathan, what you just did in the question is you articulated a kind of space that you think the world needs. It's a space that can handle the full spectrum of the human experience: doubt, rage, joy, euphoria, celebration, compassion. So it's like you learn to listen to what it is that you are desiring, and then you make it. You have a living room? Do you have a backyard? Do you have a friend with a porch? What would you do? Have a meal? Would you all read something together and discuss it? Would you all pitch in to make sure somebody's rent gets paid? Make it, because it's a revolution that we are in the midst of. And this is actually a historic pattern. Forms work until they don't. And then you got to leave those forms behind and create new forms. So this is happening. Backyards, basements, moms in Texas, pubs in South Africa, all over the place. People are forming new spiritual communities. What does everybody bring? A quote that has shaped them, and they go around and talk about what shaped you? Does everybody go around and talk about their fears? Does everybody go around and talk about what most inspires them? Yeah, create it. And good food helps. Good music, nice. But yeah, exactly. So what happened for many people is they grew up in authority structures that told them this is how it's supposed to be done. But what's happening is more and more people are realizing they've had spirit the whole time, which means you're learning to listen to your deep knowing, the Christ in you. It's the deep wisdom you've always had. So what's happened is all these people are realizing all along the Spirit has been speaking, leading, nudging. How many of you watching this had moments in your life when you didn't listen to that deep knowing and you went with what somebody else told you or somebody else's script? And then later you're like, oh, what was I thinking? If I would have trusted this, now is the time to trust this. So Jonathan, and this is about to get really, really interesting. Make the thing, create the thing, take a shot at trying to create the thing that you would love to be a part of. What is the thing that if you visited it in your town, you would be like, I can't believe I didn't think of making one of these on my own. And that's how it works. That's how it's working right now. It's very exciting.
I think what's interesting is almost with my experience, I feel like the one thing religion almost set out to do, I think, has failed in a lot of ways in providing that space for people. I feel like it almost, none of that provides the opposite, but it's like that. Isn't that what religion should be? It should be this church. Should be the space where you go and you're just reminded of that you belong and you're important to the world and like cheered on.
So got to make new spaces. Time to make new spaces.
You meet so many people like that who it's like they almost are just doing church. They want to. I have so many friends, people I know who run as fast as they can in the opposite direction of the words church and Jesus. But then you realize they're doing the exact things religion is supposed to do. Like I had a friend who I gave one of your books to because he asked, and he was like, "Yeah, I got 3 pages in, and once he started talking about the Bible, I couldn't do it. It's just too triggering." He was like, "I literally can't hear the words Jesus and the Bible and God because it's just too triggering. It brings up too much trauma, just from growing up in a religious world and hearing that, like, which is insane. That's the thing that's supposed to do that, and it makes people run the other direction."
Yep.
So I think just bring that. Like, I've definitely been places in my life where you're like, especially living in a society that's based on scarcity, you always feel like just another person. Places where you sort of feel like, whoa, you really want like. I mean, I think like one of the protests I went to in June during the Black Lives Matter movement, I was like, this is one of the first times I've ever been in a place where I haven't just felt like another. It was like, no way, like I'm wanted here, and I'm very much like just people handing out free stuff, and it's just like you're here for this greater purpose, to fight for justice and equal rights and all this stuff, and you're like, I feel like that. I honestly like left that being like, I'm gonna take this wherever I go.
I remember that when you came home, you were like deeply moved.
I was like, yeah, that was like the first time. Yeah, it was like one of the most purposeful things I ever felt. You're like, whoa, and if you wherever you go.
Okay, what do you got now?
Here we go.
Let's do a couple more, shall we?
Is literally everything spiritual, or is everything literally spiritual? Yes. Any tips on teaching high school kids? I'm just gonna do a little speed round. Any tips on teaching high school kids through Zoom? I don't have any tips, but I feel for you, man, or women, or sorry, if
Somebody.
somebody, Heidi. I feel for you. I feel like I see all these memes of people trolling their teachers, and I'm like, man, they don't want to be here. If they didn't ask for this. I would guess I would just come from the like. I think I guess if I would do it, I would just come from the like, hey guys, I'm kind of mad about, you know what I mean? I'm not stoked about this. We all are in this together. We got to make the best of it. I guess I just, you tell them that you're on your side and we're all getting through this, as opposed to this like, I guess just take your class and be like, we are going through this as a whole, and we're going to face this insane world right now together.
Yeah. Well, first off, Heidi, a teacher, we're cheering you on. You know, Preston, like
yeah,
all the
honestly, utmost respect. Like, you're doing the hardest work.
Trying, right yeah. We should talk about the white stripes. Heidi, first off, yeah, we're totally cheering you on. But the White Stripes came out in the early 2000s, this band from Detroit, Jack and Meg White. Nobody knew if they were married or brother or sister, whatever it is. She played the drums somewhat primitively, and Jack White played a particular plastic guitar that Sears made in the 60s, right? Preston, like, made this one particular kind of guitar.
Yeah.
And there was only 2 people in the band, which was new. There was no bass player. There was no second guitar player. Well, so this band intentionally made limits for themselves. But what the limits did was unleash ferocious creativity. So, man, we are in a time of limits. Like, as an educator with Zoom, that is a massive limit. But in the history of creativity, limits often have an underbelly where they stoke and catalyze new creativity that wasn't there before. So you are doing this with Preston and I. We wouldn't be doing this unless everything was shut down and I couldn't travel and we couldn't meet in groups. Mm-hmm. So this experience we are all having is because of the limits that we are. Even now, I can do book tour and anybody in the world can be at one of these stops, so to speak.
Exactly.
So as difficult as this is, what I've noticed in doing these sessions since March with people who are making things, teachers as well, is there's almost like you take the limit and the limitations and you say, okay, first off, you got to get all the anger and frustration and just vent it because it's real. But then one of the questions to ask is, what is hidden in these limits? Like, if you have if they can chat back to you, so they can give you instant real feedback. Is there some way I could use that? Because I can't get that in a classroom. I can't have a constant barrage of exactly what they're thinking. Is there some way to take the limit, and is there some underbelly to the limit that is actually something new that I can't even do in a classroom, but I can do with this? And who knows? Who knows what might be possible? Who knows what new territory there might be? Yeah. Man, difficult days with all these strange opportunities. Okay, Preston, what do you got?
Big shout out, Caitlin, real quick. Thank you for doing your work. Genuinely, just appreciate all the teachers out there. Hope you have a great song. Here we go. Aaron says Lennon or McCartney. I'd say Mick Jagger. Sorry.
We are Stones over Beatles, aren't we?
Yeah. Dad, it sounds like this book reveals more about you and your life growing up. Wait, where's this going?
Yes, it does.
Wait, come on now. It sounds like this book reveals more about you and your life growing up. What moved you more into memoir style writing now, and was there anything that held you back before? This is the most memoir thing you've done, correct?
Correct, and that's a really, really great question, and the answer is yes. And I talk about that in the book, about coming from this intellectual tradition that was about the ideas, that was about teaching, and it was almost like stories were like illustrations or examples of the truth. But it's easy to get stuck in your head. And part of this book was almost like my heart exploding, honestly. It's almost like sinking down from head into heart. And I thought about all these things that I've been through that I've never talked about that are actually what shaped me. So all the teaching, all the ideas, that was wonderful to do that, but it all came out of a flesh and blood life. And so the first line of the book is, my grandma used to keep cash in her bra. And suddenly when I realized that was the first line of the book and then followed it, me and my grandma sitting on her porch, there was so much emotion. There was so much feeling about where I come from. And there's something about, I wanted people to pick that up, like a frequency, a vibration, a feeling that everything you've been through was all part of it. So part of the book was me going back and owning every square inch of my story, because that's the only way we all together can go into a new future, is owning everywhere that we come from. And every time we fell down a flight of stairs, all the awkward, embarrassing, painful moments, we don't have to say it was great or tell some other story. You got to be honest about it, but you own it. So that's what's happening in the book, because I want people to, it's a feeling. I want people to feel that it's good to be you. It's a wondrous, miraculous thing that you're here. To be here is glorious. So yeah. That's what it's about, opening our hearts. It's the only way we can go where we want to go, is we open our hearts to each other. So the book is very much me opening my heart. Yeah. What do you got, Preston? You got another one?
Yeah, I got a few quick ones going here. Jonathan said, Preston, are you still skating? Yeah, I mean, like 6th to 9th grade, I was like hitting the park every day. I was going out filming, doing the skater thing. Now I have like a welcome in my car that I kind of bust out like probably 2 times a month, maybe 3 times. Skating's the type of thing though, where it's like I skate and then I'm like, this is the most fun thing ever. Why don't I do this more often? And then 30 minutes in, I fall like really and hurt myself really bad. And I'm like, yeah, that's why. And then and I'm like, so skating rules are always be a skater. I'm like, I think it shaped me more than anything in this world.
The other night, I'm sorry, but the other night, remember when we were all out in the street?
Yeah.
And Preston came out. Violet, Kristen, Trace, the neighbor, another neighbor showed up, and Preston came out and started skating. And Violet had never seen you skate. And Trace was like, he's really good. And you started nailing these tricks in the street. And it was, honestly, it was kind of sweet.
Well, I mean, to this day, I'll still be at a party and like bust out like a kickflip like in Doc Martens in the middle of the party. And like, you know, I'll be chasing that high.
Do you really?
Yeah.
And everybody goes, whoa.
Like, yeah. You know, the next year, I'm like just trying to get back to that.
That is awesome.
Preston, have you ever wanted to walk away from music? And if so, what was your parents' reaction? Yeah. I don't, you guys have never, it's been nothing but support, but there's never been a single, my whole entire life, there's never been a like, wait, are you not going to do this? You know what I mean? I think anything I would, the one thing I got the most from you guys growing up is whatever I do, you guys will support me in, which I think all you can ask from your parents. So that's the only thing that's ever been, that's the thing that's been drilled into my head the most, was just that whatever I do. So I've never felt any, and music, I walk away from it. I don't think I touched a guitar for like 3 months from probably about June. I was like, this is not worth the frustration and the heartache it's giving me. Now I'm like writing songs again. But yeah, I probably quit music every day at some level. Probably walk away from it, once a day. But yeah, definitely, I would say like probably like May this year, like May to about a few weeks ago, I was like done. That's it, no more music. And there's just nothing but support. So that's the. First of all, are you still making music? Yeah, here and there. Just sort of not at the pace I was when I was like in high school, but I still do. I still play guitar every day, write music. I was there for that TV show taping in LA with Carlton Hughes and others. Any possibilities of a TV show happening in the future? We got to play, don't we? We don't got a TV show.
Yeah, I got some ideas. So we'll see. I got a couple ideas. So I'll probably make some more stuff next year. Who knows? Yeah. I never say anything about it because you don't want to be the guy who's like, I got this new idea. So I think we'll probably try to make it myself as opposed to trying to find somebody else to make it. But yeah, there's always a bunch of ideas cooking.
Blueface or Lil Baby? I'll probably get killed for saying this, but I'm saying Blueface. I don't know, man. You could obviously Lil Baby.
Blueface or Lil Baby?
Yeah, Blueface or Lil Baby. How's those two names?
You know, there's a picture of Lil Baby in our bathroom, in the hall bathroom there.
Yeah, I get crucified for saying this, but I think Blueface is way funnier. But obviously Lil Baby's better. I don't know, man. I don't know. They're both in their own.
These are the big questions.
Apples and oranges, man. That was a great little question in here.
Let's do a couple more.
Yeah. What was the most poignant part of this interaction with your son? Ooh, here we go.
Oh, what a great question. I'll tell, like having everybody meet you is really meaningful to me. Like people who might know my work, and I've talked about you guys, but then having them meet you, Preston, is like really fun. So the person who asked that question, just watching everybody see what we see, just what a amazing thing it is to know you.
Awesome.
And then I was struck with how the book, when I'm the age in the book that you are now, like that's where you connected.
Yeah.
I had never thought of, you didn't know that guy. And this is the closest you get to like almost meeting that guy. I noticed you have a picture of one of my bands on your desk, that Big Phil picture.
Yeah.
That one band. And I'm fascinated with my dad's stories of the dad that before I came around. So I get that feeling, but that's the most poignant thing.
There's like a picture of you and mom at my age in the 90s. I'm like, it's just like I mean, I said this before. I don't think I can say it again. I've only ever known you when you've owned a house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, great. Your mom and I, her group of friends and my group of friends all went on vacation when we were 19 to this cabin in the woods, and Kristen Childress and I were on like dish duty. And so it's the fall of 1989 and your mom and I are washing dishes, this whole group of friends. And somebody for some reason took a picture of it. You know what I mean? So weird.
Yeah.
Like, who thought that was an interesting picture to take of just the two of us who weren't an item or anything like that? And then years later we have this picture. And like, you look at that picture and like, if you would have said to those kids, hey, here's how it's going to go for you two.
Yeah.
You would have been like,
well,
I feel about you, like where you're going to.
That was in the early 90s, and then we got 20 years later, and you have a son looking at that photo. You know what I mean? Like, it's just great. I have moments in my life, too, where something happens, and I'm like, you would have told me. I met this person. This is what would happen.
31 years ago.
Yeah.
That photo was taken. So that's how Preston, that's a great question that was asked about poignant. When I think about all the things you're going to do and places you're going to go, you've already blown my mind. And I'm like, whoa. When we were in like London walking down the street and you knew a guy, Preston gets stopped on the streets of London.
Yeah,
we were in New York talking to you because you were like across town, and mom was like, when we're going to meet up with you, and you were talking, you're like, hold on, somebody just stopped me on the street, and you so you've already.
So that was, this guy definitely not watching it, but I was walking on the street in New York. This guy I've never seen before. It's like, Preston. I was like, oh no. And I was, and you're talking to him and you're like, come on, just click. Just do your thing. Just remember his name. I walked away and still didn't know who he was. He's like, you're still in a band with Zach, right? I was like, he knows Zach. You know what I mean? And he's
that has been the experience being your dad, is wherever we go, everybody knows Preston. I remember walking over here in Fairfax District and a whole group of kids ran across the street in traffic to hug you. So that's just what it's been like. So whatever you're doing next, I get a front row seat. That's the best part. So that's what's poignant about doing this with you, is thinking about already what I've gotten to see with you and like do it together, and then thinking about where you're headed next. Just unbelievable. Let's do a couple more.
Postcards or letters? I think there's better songs about postcards. Obviously, neither. It's 2020. You know, I was born in 2000, so neither for me. But I feel like there's a lot of good songs about postcards. I'd say postcards. You know. Letters and Packages by American Football is a great song now. So I don't know. Watching from New Zealand, what was your favorite thing about our country? When I was a kid, I got like a stuffed, is it kiwi? No, what's that animal? What's you guys' animal? I mean, you got a lot of them, but what's the
what's your guy's animal?
whatever, like, it's not, kiwi's a fruit. I got some like stuffed animal bird that just ruled. He was like, just because it was like the I only been there when I was like a wee lad.
Yes.
Ketchup tastes a lot different. I remember that.
Mhm.
Now, but
Mhm.
I love New Zealand. I love Australia. Australia feels like a different planet. I'm like, this isn't real. This is too awesome. It's like all the best parts of everything just in one. You're walking down the street, you're like, this isn't London. No, that's London. Oh no, that's Southern California. You're just like,
Yeah.
let's take all the good things and put them here. I don't know. That place is awesome. Okay, this is Rob. How did you manage to keep your? I'm curious about this. How did you manage to keep your kids away from feeling the heaviness of all the change?
I don't see change as heaviness.
Yeah,
The change,
writer right there.
Change was only ever, oh man, this chapter is done. It's time for the next chapter. So spirit brings lightness. It may be serious, and it may be significant, and it may have all sorts of risk, but there's risk anyway. It's always risk. So it never felt heavy. It felt like a long, slow evolution in a particular direction.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like joy, actually. So we were only ever trying to follow it where it leads, and just telling you guys honestly, this is, what do you think about this? We're sensing we do this.
Yeah.
Bringing you in as early as possible. And then we went to did the next thing. So yeah, it never felt heavy.
I would say too, I feel like the heaviness would have came from if you didn't do that. I would have picked up on it.
Oh,
that's the
wow.
thing. If you didn't follow that, that's the one thing I would have picked up on, was the like. I feel like you followed your dreams, so I never had any sense of like, I feel like you never lived. I feel like I never feel a sense of like you trying to live through me or anything. You know what I mean? I feel like almost if you didn't follow that change, I would pick up on that, and I would feel that like heaviness came from doing the change and following.
Yeah, it. For us, following where it leads was the gift that we gave you.
Word, yeah.
We wanted to pick up on this whole thing as an adventure that you get to go on.
Yeah. Okay, it is the kiwi. Word. Thank you, Jonathan. That rule. That's what I thought it was. But I didn't want to be like, I got this like stuffed fruit. You know what I mean? Not weird.
Okay, let's do one more, and then.
Okay. All right. Final question. I'm gonna look through all these. So, you got 30 seconds. If you gotta type one, last one, get it in real quick.
I love when you do this. Oh my goodness, that is awesome. You're like really working to.
I know. I saw
it's a banger for the last song of the show.
I saw Bookstore comment something in the chat, and I was like, okay, we gotta wrap this puppy up.
No, I was just sharing that link to the audiobook.
Okay, cool.
Oh, great. Samantha, one more question and we're done.
I could have been like 3 questions in the time I'm looking for this one. Okay. Here we go. When did you find out that Everything is Spiritual was the summary of your life's work?
The 2006 tour was a life-changing experience for me, because I went out and did that tour, and there was something about it, talking about these ideas in those spaces, that was like, oh, I feel like I'm here to point in every direction and go, look, and something about everything is spiritual. It struck some chord with me about what I'm here to do. And then the 2015 tour was like, why do I just keep coming back to this? Because my wonder and awe just keeps increasing. And then this book started because I had an idea for Everything is Spiritual 3, like a third tour, but then I kept going, no, but the wonder and the mystery isn't just facts about the science in the world. It's each of our stories. Like, that's the whiteboard. That's the marvel, is that you're here and I'm here and we're having this experience. So yeah, at some level, I was like, oh, that. At some level, some people say like you're here to do something, and everything is a variation on that. Everything is you know what I mean? Everything's a riff on that. And so I was like, just double down and own it. And so I had all these different titles, but I just kept coming back to, this is what you've been doing the whole time. This is the closest you've gotten to telling what it's like to be you. So just own it. Just own it, Rob Bell. It just feels so good. Even like right now.
I mean,
so good.
It's almost like a Liam Gallagher Be Here Now. You got like everything is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything is spiritual tats are coming. You know what I mean? Like, this is the first time we were in Santa Barbara at a show last year. I was wearing the slides for, and some guy came up, like a big fan, and had like Love Wins tatted here. And I was like, that's what people get like my favorite band's lyrics tatted. You know what I mean? I was like, that's so cool. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I remember a woman had Everything is Spiritual. She had done an outline of all the drawings and tattooed them on her arm. So who knows? But yeah, that's when like I said, over the past 14 years, I was like, that's kind of summarized everything I've been doing. So let's just own it all the way. Preston, I'm so glad we did this.
It ruled. I'm loving all the nice comments right now.
Oh, good.
This is great. This is so, everyone's so kind here. Thank you for sitting through this. This is awesome. I had a great time.
I'm so moved that people that all these people were a part of you and I talking about our lives and their lives.
Yeah.
It's a really humbling, amazing thing, isn't it?
It's awesome. So great. I'm glad you all enjoyed it, and thank you all for being so kind.
So thank you, Preston, seriously. Thank you so much. I'll see you in a couple minutes when you come in that door.
And we got Samantha back.
To all of you, I'm so thrilled that you're part of this. I'll be doing a bunch of these events over the next 2 weeks with all sorts of different conversation partners. There's the book. Obviously, there's an audio book. And then the Robcast came out today, which is my wife, Kristen, and our other son, Trace, talking about their thoughts about the book. So all that, there you go.
Yay.
Thank you, lovely. Thank you, Book Soup.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This was a wonderful event. Really lovely to see father and son together talking about these things. And everybody, please buy the book. It's a signed copy here at Book Soup only. So unless there's others elsewhere, but tonight, get your copy. And thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Preston. And we'll see you guys at our next event later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful night.
Bye-bye.